On this episode of Cooking with Katie and Ilana, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, we were talking onions in the pre-show, and I heard a trick recently. I want to confirm or deny.
We were talking onions, like you do.
Uh-huh.
I cannot cut an onion without breaking down like hysterical into tears. And
don't cut the root.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that it? Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay. But what if you just cut it in half? I've tried everything.
What was the tip that you heard?
That if you like wet a paper towel and put it nearby, like really close, like on the cutting board, that I guess the like
it'll absorb all the
because it goes to your eyes because they're moist. Is that BS? What do we think? Weigh in.
I mean,
Never worked for me.
I'm no onion
sliced your finger off, so.
aficionado, but that sounds like a little bit of BS. Yeah, this whole thing came about because Freddie sliced his finger off.
Mm-hmm. Almost.
The whole thing. No.
Yeah.
Just the tip. Just the tip.
Just the tip. That's a perfect way to start.
When I was a little gal, my mom is the most jumpy person in the entire world. And she always jump scares if you talk to her and she's not expecting it. And I went outside when she was trimming the hedges to ask her a question, and she lobbed off the top of her finger with the hedge trimmer. And then she like fully blamed me for it. And she went to the ER, but it's like...
Did she get it back on? Is she missing?
Yeah, they were able to sew the little thing back on. But yeah, so that's been a little point of contention, you know.
Wait, I have so many follow-up stories about people who have lost fingers. I feel like I should just keep
maybe a whole podcast episode just on fingertip injury.
Well, our guest today does have, I believe, all his fingers.
I have all my fingers still, but I mean, Katie, do you feel any shame? How many percentage would you take the blame for your mom doing this? Like 30% or 50 or?
You know, I would take 10% because 10%. All I was a little kid looking for my mom to ask her a question, and she's just real jumpy, you know? I can't control that.
You weren't trying to scare her.
Oh, no. I was just like, Mom, when's Dad gonna come home? And she was like, ah!
Wait, I have to tell you, though, that is me. Like, my kids and my husband will be playing hide and go seek or hide and seek, whatever. And I will know that they're hiding, and then they will jump out and scare me, and I will be scared. Like, I know you're hiding, and I know which room you're hiding in because our house is small. And then I will still jump and scream.
Yeah, my girlfriend, she screams when I walk anywhere in their house. She knows I'm home. And then I just walk past, and then she's like, ah! And I'm like, you know I'm home. This is so bad. By the way, I forced her out in a black slope the other, Christmas when we were skiing. And then it was the last slope of the day, which you should never do. And then her knee got totally, she janked it off. And
she janked it off.
Well, no, I don't know how you call it. Not janked it off, but what do you call it? It came kind of like the little thing inside broke.
Yeah. And, I janked it off.
Yeah,
she janked it off. I take 30% blame, but I won't take any more than that. Yeah.
I think that's a good. I think that's a good percentage.
Yeah, 30%.
Yeah.
That's fair. Wow. I'm glad we really unpacked some of this trauma before we even told everyone who we're talking to today. So why don't we start by having you introduce yourself? And
Cool. My name is Freddie, and I'm the founder and brand director of the Swedish design and brand and film agency Snask. We've been around for 17 years, and we started as students, so we're basically junior. We never learned anything from anyone.
That it's better like that sometimes, you know? There's nothing to kind of direct your way of thinking or kind of cloud your original creativity.
Yeah.
You know, I hadn't known that before this, and I had taken notes on your work and had a bunch of questions, but knowing that you are self-taught really gives me a new perspective on the aspect of play in your work, because Katie and I both have very traditional paths. We went to design school. We went and worked for big agencies or small agencies, whatever. And it kind of killed some of our creativity. And I don't.
Can you tell? Just looking at us.
Now we're
No.
boring.
We may have all our fingertips, but we're lacking in other areas.
But I feel like in some way, because you have like really strict brand guidelines, or like you're working on the same thing over and over, and you get nervous, I feel like, to try something different. And obviously now we work for ourselves, so we've been able to kind of bring that back to life. But I noticed when I had interns or like junior designers working for me that were still in school, they were the most creative people, because I would give them any assignment and they would be like, ooh, I could do it this way. I could do it this way. Like, it was all problem solving, and there was no right answer to them. And then once they go out to the real world, it's like there apparently is a right answer to design. And even though they're going to get judged way harder in the classroom than they would in real life, I feel like, because critiques in art school are so cutthroat.
Brutal.
They're brutal. But I feel like that actually makes a lot of sense for the work you do, because it's so experimental. And it's so like pulled in so many directions. So let's unpack that. Let's take the Amazon box. I'll even show off what's inside. But yeah, how do you maintain that balance of play within your work, since you work on so many different projects? Maybe start by talking about some of the projects you work on, and then we can unpack the play piece.
Yeah, I mean, to start off, why we started without any experience is because we told people that we were starting an agency straight out of university. And then people told us, but oh, you need 10 years of experience in the industry. And we were like, okay. And then we were like, but whose experience is it that we're going to get? And we kind of quickly found out most of the time it's old white man's experience. Sometimes they made theories or methods before the internet even existed and blah. So we were like, why don't we just start our own thing and make all the mistakes ourselves? Try to learn from most of them, and this way we should have kind of our way of doing things. And that was basically the thinking, the very short, on maybe a few beers or wine glasses, thinking behind doing it this way. But then we did. And I mean, now of course we don't regret. And I mean, some of the first projects we wanted to do had to do with culture, and theme parks was very strangely our thing. So most of the culture, like theaters or whatever, and music bands and record labels and theme parks, they don't have any money, at least not in Sweden. So after 2 years working with loads of culture, we were like, well, we don't get paid. We get so little paid, but we get so much freedom, which is great, because when you don't get paid, you can tell them, well, if we don't get paid enough, at least we want freedom, so we can build a good case out of it. And I guess play comes in there, that you don't want the client to F up for the whole work, which now after 17 years, I do know that most of the times clients will fuck up the end result sometime, most of the times. So it's kind of a rather nice thing to be allowed to play for 100%. I mean, I've seen your girls work. You both are fantastic, and your like lettering is, you can see that you're using playfulness now, and it's really nice.
Yeah, there's so much humor in your work, which is awesome, and it's just delightful, and it runs through pretty much everything that you do. And I think it's really cool to see that, because I'm a person who values humor and, cracks a lot of jokes in my real life. But then when it comes to my work, for some reason, I like pull back and I can be playful with the lettering, but I get a little more serious sometimes. And it's really cool to see someone who's just like fully letting it out, letting it all hang out. Cause like, that's what I want to get to. And there's like little parts of me that are like, oh, you got to pull it back. But no, it's so enjoyable when you don't.
I feel like, Katie, for you, that when you said that, I went in one direction. I was like, oh, but her work is so like buttoned up. And then there are some of your cards, some of your
that are sometimes like, my copywriting, it comes out a little bit, but I definitely want to take a note from your book and let it all hang out a little bit more. I'm curious, because one of the most difficult things, I worked as an art director for a while, and, we'd have to sell some of all of our ideas to the client. And I was just watching some of the videos that you came up with and the concepts and thinking like, what was the pitch room like? Like, the client has to, I saw one of the testimonials on your site was like, working with them, you have to be a client with balls. And I thought that's very accurate because, like you said, the clients will, sometimes pull things back when they would have been better in their original form. But what are some of the ways that you've kind of approached the pitching process when you're like one of the spots that you did for, what is it, Klarna? Is that how you say their name?
Yeah.
Was like a horse with the longest, most luxurious hair that was being played by the string part of an orchestra. And I was just imagining, like, how did you sell this to them? What picture did you paint? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, thanks, first of all. I mean, I love hearing that you like it because not everyone maybe does that, but maybe not everyone understands it like you guys do. But for Klarna, everything that we've done for Klarna is not talking about their product or service. They are a kind of a bank and they are dealing with checkouts in online shops, whatever, but they never speak about it because it's kind of it's self-explanatory and it's kind of boring to speak about checking out. So everything we did for them is just to give the viewer the feeling of the brand. So not explaining anything about this is how you check out with Klarna, put in your card details. They will know that anyway. So instead, we were like the feeling of Klarna. If Klarna would be a violin concert, instead of the horsehair being on the actual instruments or the what do you call this in English? The
Violin.
yeah, but the stick. What do you call the
Oh, the bow.
the bow. Yeah, instead of having the horsehair on the bow, we were like, why not add it on the whole like
Yeah.
instrument is the whole
Yeah.
horsehair. And the feeling of this should be smooth because everything the Klarna does has to do with smoothness because of smooth payments and whatever. So that's basically how we try and sell it in. But it's also different because Klarna is Swedish. And when we work with American clients, it's different over there. In every time we go into the US, it's like, oh, here the client is the king or queen, and they decide what's good or bad, etc. Whereas in Sweden, it's the opposite way around. They come to us because we
Interesting.
are experts, and then we say. So when we come over there, it's always an agency in between, and they always get nervous and they tell us, hey, you can't say those things to our client because blah blah blah, and we can never shut up about it. And the client first they get a bit baffled, and then they are like, but hey, they're true. It's true. I mean, we're flying them over from Sweden. We do pay them a lot of money because they are experts. So why should we, who don't know, come with a lot of it? But sometimes, I mean, we solved it other ways, in creative ways. One time we were on a shoot in New York, and this is a long story, but I'm trying to make it short. We did a shoot, and they sent one person from the client, and then 60 people were like loads of like people who weren't with the client. And this person from the client had one job, of course, and is to look at the films and the stills and approve them. And probably this person felt that if I don't change things in these sets or whatever, I'm not doing my job correctly, which is totally wrong, but I can
Yep.
understand the person. So after a while, we realized this and we started to, okay, now we have the perfect picture. Before we take the client here, let's fuck something up so this person can correct it. So we would
Oh
like
my
take
God.
a bottle that would be standing up and then we would just put it down. And then the client would come and we were like, hey, can you prove? Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe we should like the bottle looks like it's laying down. Maybe we should put it up because it looks like liquid could
That's
come out of it or something.
genius.
We were like, okay, you mean like this? And we put it up and we take another photo. And then we're like, yeah, you're right. That's actually true. And
Oh
then
my gosh.
the person was like, yeah, it's approved. We were like, oh, great. That was a really good thought. And then we just started fucking things up in every little thing we did. And the client was so happy because he or she felt very important being there. And yeah, and that was the way we did it that time. Sorry, that was a long story.
No, that was.
No.
I think we should move to Sweden.
where
They're better
where
there.
the clients are better. No, that's so funny. There's so much of that like ego and bureaucracy and like I've got to make sure that the bosses think I'm valuable, like all that stuff kind of plays into it. So that's really funny that you recognized that and gave them something to fix. It's really sad in one way, but genius that you kind of figured that out.
Yeah, it's
I
also kind of beautiful and vulnerable. It's like they need to feel needed and seen and heard. And this
I
was a
think
great way of
everyone
putting
needs that.
it.
Everyone,
Yeah.
like, no matter what position they're in, everyone wants to be recognized. Everyone wants to feel like they contributed and being able to understand that, like, that's all they were looking for. They weren't trying to be a dick. They were just trying to, like, do their job and be good at it and like feel valued. And so, yeah, that was a genius way of going about, kind of getting them on the same team as you and like making
Yeah,
them feel like a part of the picture.
we had an EP. He was super experienced, like 63 years old. You got afraid just looking at him. He had such a, what do you say, natural respect. But he told us after the whole shoot, he was like, guys, I'm fucking moving to Sweden. I've been in this industry in New York for all my life. I'm gonna have a heart attack in 2 years probably. Why? When Sweden, you are the kings and queens. The agency can be, yeah. So he was saying like you, like, why is it like this?
Yeah, I do wonder why. Are you a plant? Are you converting people to come on over to Sweden? It's working. It's working. We'll be there in 20 minutes. That's really great. I love that. And I really do wonder why it is so different here. I think in the US, we have, like Katie said, like a lot of it's tied up to ego. And it's crazy because there are so many people who are creatives and who are small business owners. I'd be curious
Maybe,
about
I
that.
don't know. I mean, there's so much pressure for making certain goals and ROI. And I mean, obviously, like, that's important for a business, but I mean, there's so many layers of bosses on bosses on bosses, and you've got to meet these certain number goals or else. So maybe it's, just the toxic culture of pressure around that here in the US. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, in the US, it's very easy to get fired, and you can get fired almost on the day and very
Mhm.
little protection.
Yeah.
In Sweden, it's very hard to be fired. There's a lot of laws about it,
Okay.
which means that
Oh,
people
wow.
dare to speak up more, and they can be wrong. They can admit that they are wrong without being feeling like they're gonna get fired. And one client we had, a big client from Sweden, we were working with them, and they came with a lot of feedback, and we were like, this is really, really bad feedback. And I mean, we don't really know how to respond to this because you're doing it. You're basically doing our work now. If we're gonna do like you say, you are designing this thing, but you're paying us shitloads to do it while you are not the experts. And of course, we can do it like you want to be a nice agency with caring for our relationship. But the best thing is just to be honest and tell you, like, we think that you should take another think about this. And they did. And they were like, holy shit, you're right. We are actually sitting now and designing while we're paying you loads to do it. Why are we doing it this way? Because we can't even explain why the line should be thicker or why the color should be this or that, etc. And yeah.
Mm. So you actually had that conversation with them? Was it like a video call, or how did you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, we are kind of famous for having a lot of conflicts with our clients, but not in a bad way. It's more like a relationship. Like, if you never fight in a relationship, it's just you don't have a relationship basically. But if you know how to, I mean, how to handle and communicate in those fights or in those, what do you say, clashes, that's how you have a successful relationship. And it's the same thing with the client. Like, if the honesty and transparency is there, we can tell them whatever pops up in our mind, and no one is risking respect or losing their face or losing their job. And I think for us, it becomes a better process of actually, yeah, moving forward.
I love that. I think open communication and building relationships is something we stress a lot too, because we see a lot of people, especially now, they try and do one of the things we do in our work is a lot of outreach. Not so much anymore, but when we were building our businesses, we would, cold email someone and say, like, hey, we want to work with you. And that doesn't really work the same way now. You really have to build a relationship. And oftentimes that means kind of showing up on their socials or being in touch with the work that they're putting out and, whether it's liking it or messaging them and telling them like, good job, it's building a relationship. And when you build a relationship, there are going to be things that whether you disagree or just need some clarification, like you have to have an open conversation. And I know you wrote a book actually a while ago. You wrote this, Make
Yeah,
Enemies and Gain Fans. And Katie and I are working on a book together. We're in the writing process now. It comes out
nice.
in 2025, but it's both of our second or third time working on a book. And you wrote yours in 72 hours? What?
So,
What happened there? How'd you do that?
so basically, we did not ride in 72 hours. It took like 8 months or something, and we were drinking a beer when it was finished. We drank a beer with our then CEO, who was just a friend who was an advisor who wanted a title in between jobs. But he was very like different minded from us, and he told us over a beer like, I'm gonna write the forward, but you have to lie and tell and write that you wrote it in 72 hours. We're like, why? And he was like, because it's a thing to hang up your clothes with. If they can hang up your book and say, hey, they wrote this in 72 hours, it's a thing they will remember. We were like, but it's a lie. He's like, it's fine. And then it's funny because we wrote that, and then we got a lot of reviews, and they were like, oh my God, I love this book, blah, blah, blah. I mean, not that great, but I mean, for being written in 72 hours. We were like, no, they're using 72 hours now to
Oh my
say,
gosh. That's
yeah.
so funny. Well, I love that story, but I also really love this idea of making enemies and gaining fans. I know that's really attached and intertwined with your brand. I wonder if that kind of muscle of having not arguments, but like uncomfortable discussions and like people maybe not liking your work or disagreeing with what you have to say, is that a muscle that you grew over time? Or have you always been someone who was okay with whether it's confrontation or just people not liking you? I mean, we have a large social media presence and we're really thankful that we don't have a lot of negativity. But when we do, it does cut. Sometimes we're like, that's funny. And sometimes we're like, that is really mean. How have you kind of flexed that muscle over time?
I mean, I think from the beginning we were pretty like made up on what we believed in, and I mean, from the beginning we had 100-point manifesto before we even started the company that we then made into 10. So we kind of knew very. I mean, when you grew older, you realize how little you know, of course, but when you were young, we knew everything. And so, Make Enemies and Game Fans came from our belief in branding that if you're a brand you need to stand up for something, your own beliefs. And if you stand up for your beliefs, you will get enemies, but you will get the right kind of enemies that you don't want as fans anyway. And you will also get real fans, fans that don't just scroll by your post. They actually stop, they watch your post, they click like, they tag their friends, they comment, they engage basically. And I mean, we really loved that concept. And I think that, I mean, the confrontation comes more from one, from making better work, and two, for fighting the conservative world, because we've always had the conservative old men as kind of our biggest enemy, and it's very easy to find them because they're everywhere in our society. So it's always been a thing. And I mean, one project we did, because if this is a type podcast, so I can speak a little bit about that as well. One thing we ran into was a big design boss said like, oh, why is the O, the X height of the O, similar to no higher than the T? It's not mathematically correct. We were like, yeah, but this is like topography skills. It's not mathematical, but it should be higher
Optical.
because yeah, it's optical. And then we told them, this was a huge brand. We told them we can continue educating you round after round doing these things, but we will have to put on hours that is billable. And we think that the problem here is that you don't trust us, so you keep asking, and that's fine for us, but it will cost more, of course, because it's going to take longer. After a while, they realize and they're like, you know what? I'm not going to keep asking things just because I don't trust you. I'm going to trust you. And if there's something I want to know, I can just email you. And we were like, yeah, that's way better.
I feel like this all comes back to being an expert, and you don't need a specific qualification. It's believing in your product or in your work or in the project that you're doing. And I always said to like young designers, it is your job to educate your client, whether that's included in your price or billable hours. Like it's your job to show them that you know what you're talking about, whether they need like justification on why you did something or not. When they see it, like their response is in part determined by how you present it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like just coming back to that idea of being an expert and also, yeah, you want to have fun. Like, what is creativity if we're not breaking some of the rules? Like, an O is going to be an O, whichever way we turn it. It's always an O. And so, like, literally, but it's not about it hitting the baseline at the exact spot. Like, when you're creating a personality or when you're creating something that's to be enjoyed, it's about the whole package, not just the mathematics behind it. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
But also, literally, it's got to overshoot or else it won't look right.
Right.
Yeah.
But if someone did a tiny little O in their logo
no,
and everything else
I'm
was
following
big,
you.
yeah, no, you got it. You got it. We got this.
What's the book you guys are writing?
Take it away, Katie.
We're writing a book That's like a workbook mixed with essays about how to find your artistic identity and your style, and then how to apply it in a way that feels like really authentic to you. So yeah,
Nice.
it's a big undertaking for sure, but we're really excited. We're in the thick of it.
To the thick of
Nice.
it. Yeah, we have a whole about a year to finish, and it's been really great. Katie and I have been working together for I don't know how many years now, but we've kind of found a way that we work best together over that time. And so it's been an easier fit now to write this together than it would have been a couple years ago. And it's been really cool to have someone to bounce ideas off because we both did our first books solo, and having someone else to like, bounce things around has been just so helpful when you're taking on something both
Which
so different and so large.
you know a lot about that too, don't you? About working with other
Collaborators.
people.
Yeah, let's
Why
talk
don't
about your
you, share a little bit about your team and who you work with?
I mean, some of them are dear friends, some of them have become friends, some of them we worked with for like 16 years, some of them just came in last year. And we kind of build teams for each project. But of course, if we like each other, we keep working together, if the project suits. So it kind of ends up being just this group of people that we like. If you're an idiot or an asshole, you of course never work with us again. That's natural. So we kind of end up with very nice people they kind of like each other as well. So
That's
I think
amazing.
that's, yeah.
My dad is an entrepreneur, and he always used to say to me, you hire people, not skill. Meaning, like, you could hire someone who you like and you can teach them the skill. You don't hire someone because they know how to do something if they're not a good fit. Speaking of having a team, you said you kind of expand and contract based on what the project is.
hmm
How did you know when to hire those first couple people? Like, obviously you got a project and you were like, we're going to need more hands on deck. Was that scary, or like, how did you know how many people, or just navigating? I think a lot of our community really is at a point in their business where they need to hire, let's say, one other person, whether it's a junior designer or a virtual assistant, or even just outsource an accountant. And they get really scared because they're like, I don't know if I can cover the cost of this, when the whole point of hiring someone is to basically give yourself more room to cover that cost, is to make more money doing the thing that you're really good at. So was that hard to like scale up, or just kind of take it every day by day? What's that like?
I mean, from the beginning, we thought it was really cool to be a lot of people and to have employees. We were like, wow, this is how we measure if we made it or not, and call home to
Mm,
mom and like, look, I made it. I have employees. And then, of course, having employees is complicated. It's like much harder than you think. And you, of course, need to keep everyone happy, and people should develop and they should what it's a lot of work. And I think when we reached 12, all happened organically, that we were like, oh, Peter and Eve, they have 100% to do. The Lotta over here, she has maybe 30% to do. And then we get a project, then we're like, we need to get more work for her. Then we get maybe a new client, and whoa, that's 90% more work. So Lotta will now have 100% to do, but then we need someone to do the 20% extra.
Mhm.
Let's hire a new person and a new person, and they never stops. And suddenly you need to, of course, getting a lot of projects for your employees because you're now responsible for their wages, their pension, for everything. And what happened to us was we started saying yes to projects that we didn't think was fun or well, like super good for us. And our employees were like, why are we working on this project? Because this is super bad and boring. And we were like, well, we need to get money in so we can pay your wages. And then they were said, but we don't work at Snask to get paid the best. We of course need a payment as like a wage, but we could earn more money to be freelancers. So we are not here because of that. And we were like, okay, so why are we doing it this way? We could just doing it another way. And that's when we changed completely and started working with all of them on consultancy. And they could just work with any agency or any client in the world, and as well as us. And we could work with anyone, and we could start saying no to clients because we didn't have a big payroll and a lot of people we needed to take care of. Suddenly it's been like that up and down. But also one thing that happened was US started to build big in-house departments, where they would hire a very good like creative director, like Leland Mashmeyer from Collins, for example, going to Shobani, attracting loads of great art directors, designers, copywriters. And so the agencies that wanted to be relevant had to shrink and become very niche and sharp. We worked a lot with the US, so we did the same in Sweden. So we became very small and pointy instead. And then when we worked with Spotify, Klarna, etc., they have huge in-house departments with great designers. So I think it's like that's how we've been growing and then shrinking again. And now we have a system where we can be as big or small as we need. That's taken a lot of stress out.
That's super smart. And it's so important to continuously check back in on the model that you've created, like you did, to say, hey, just because this is the way that it's supposedly done in the industry, does this match with my values? Does this match with my goals and the goals of the people that, I work with? And your answer was no. And you took the feedback and you made a pivot. And I think people are so scared to kind of go outside of the path that's been laid as if it's the only one. So it's really cool to hear how you made that change and how it's ultimately really helped you, that being that nimble, now you can do the work that you set out to do in the first place, and you don't end up at the place that the other people do when they follow the laid out path, which is burnout, frustration. So it's really good to hear that.
Thank you.
I feel like we've done that a lot in our business too, is not in the like expand and contract, but just in pivoting. I feel like that word is it's like such a corporate word, but we've put out programs and then said, okay, well, this is working really well. What's working about it? Or this is working really well, but we're not enjoying it. Or this is not working. Or this is working, but we're just like not fulfilled. And so we're always changing. And I know I've heard you mention this before, but no one in your team is like went to school to get a business degree. Do you feel like that was just a natural, like some of you just naturally took to it, had the entrepreneurial spirit, or has that just been like a lot of trial and error, a lot of reading, a lot of research, and just you're passionate so you want to figure it out?
I think the last thing resonates the most. Like, I think we were passionate about design, and that kind of made us entrepreneurial in a way. But I mean, since we started our own agency instantly, it's like kids with no parents at home. You can have as much marmalade on your sandwich as no one is watching you. And I think that helped us a lot in that we could do whatever we wanted. We started buying alcohol out on bars with the company card. We were like, hey, we need a new outfit. We went to like loads of fancy clothing stores and bought clothes from the company card and thought like, hey, we can just write like photo shoot or something. And then many years later, we realized, no, okay, this is illegal. Not very good. And things like that, we just learned along the way. But what we did was always hiring a lot of designers who we thought were better than us. And they were, of course, better than us. And that also kind of made it more natural for us to have time to develop other ways of the company, like getting clients or doing a stupid project or doing talking. I mean, we do a lot of speaking engagement. So that's also one big part of our company. So I mean, it's all evolved kind of natural from the passion for design and combined with no one telling us off. You can't do this. No one has a financial. Well, we actually lied once in an interview that Eric was a Swiss banker. And because there's no journalists in our industry, there's not really people who dig deep, like in politics. So they used to ask us like, oh, what's a normal day like? Or we went to Sweden visit at Snask, but they never came. They just sent us questions. Or what's your biography? And then we wrote like for Eric, for example, we wrote, yeah, me and Magnus went into a Swiss bank and he worked there. And then he walked out with us. He just stood up and walked out, quit his job, and never went back. And there was just a joke. And we're like, is someone going to believe this? And one time we went to Toronto and on the conference, and before that, someone tweeted like, oh, Snask is coming, can't wait. And especially I want to meet Eric. And Eric was like, why does he want to meet me? This is so strange. And then we get there, and then this guy comes up. He's like, hey, I'm the organizer. Love it. And Eric, you're finally here. And he hugged him. Eric is like, yeah, hi. He's like, you know what? You're the only person with the same background as me. Eric is like, what? How do you mean? Like, you're a musician? He's like, no, I also used to work in a Swiss bank. And then I went into design. And Eric was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
You gotta have fun with it. I feel like you gotta have fun. I feel like you all have the work hard, play hard attitude. Would you say that's? I was just reading about that kind of attitude, and I feel like it gives you the opportunity to work really hard when you're at work and play really hard at home. And people often look for this like work life balance, but this idea of just work really hard and play really hard, and that's your balance. Like, just do it all full ass. Like, do everything you possibly can to the best of your ability. And yeah, who cares if you make up a story? Like, none of this is life or death. We're
No,
designing beautiful things. We're telling stories. Like, we're adding value. We're adding entertainment. Yeah, I love that. I
Now
love
I'm
that
curious what other
attitude.
little like white lies are buried in your your digital trail, because we've got the 72-hour book
exactly.
debunked. We've got the Swiss banker debunked. What else is
Yep.
out there?
I mean, there are loads of them because we come from music, all of us, and our idols, like everything from the Doors, Beatles, Rolling Stones, they used to lie all the time in interviews, saying like, "Oh, Jesus came down to the mountain and he told me to write this song," and they were,
Mm-hmm.
"Wow." And then you're like, "No, he didn't. They just made it up."
Yeah.
So they made all these things up in interviews. So it became natural for us to just do that. We once said that we lived in the Swedish Princess Madeleine's old flat all together, and once we said that Eric used to be a youth player for the soccer team Arsenal in London. So much that one guy believed it so much that he did an internship at us, and it turned out afterwards that he came just because he thought that Eric had played for Arsenal and he was a big Arsenal fan. And
Eric is
yeah,
really attracting all these groupies.
yeah, exactly, exactly, for sure. But I think that it's, as you say, work hard, play hard. It's definitely something that we've always been doing. And also, like, if we do, I mean, if we don't do good work, we are just clowns. So we have to back it up by doing like high quality and put in the extra hours in good quality work. But doing that means that we can play hard. We can do whatever we want. We released shower beer, which is a beer made specifically to drink in the shower, and it became super huge. Everyone wanted it, and Tom Hanks talked about it, and it was like just huge all over the world. And it's just for nothing. We lost money on that project, but it became a big hit internationally, which is
Well,
just,
yeah, for
yeah.
something, because the buzz and the marketing that it brought, I'm sure, is
I
helpful.
have a question about that. So you said you
Hmm.
lost money on that project. I think a lot of creatives have these really grand ideas of like, I should shoot a music video for myself, even though I'm not a singer. I'm just going to do it for, you know what I mean? Like that. I just have these great ideas. And I can see that you've executed some of those for your brand because it's fun,
Hmm.
because it builds rapport with your audience, because it's enjoyable, because it flexes your creative muscles. How do you balance the financial piece of that? Like, what do you say to someone who's like, I can't really afford to do this? Like, how would they go about making something like that? Would they mock it up? Would they, how would they navigate that? Because I think we have a lot of
Well,
people who would be in that position.
yeah, I mean, first of all, we don't want to be in any network societies that are around the globe, AGI being the worst, with only old white men almost at the top, especially in Sweden, but almost all over the world. You can only become a member if you're recommended by an existing member. Oh, who's that? An old white man. Oh, okay.
Mm.
So there we save a lot of money. We
Yeah.
also don't compete with our work because we've been in juries and we see how juries sometimes behave, and often also old white men sitting and having the final word. And we don't like that. So if the client doesn't demand us, we never compete with our work. And that's often kind of a lot of money that goes into competing with your work. So we kind of take that money and spend it on something fun. Or if we
Mhm.
do a boring work, because some projects will be cash projects, some will be fun projects, and some very few will be both of them. But then you can say, okay, let's do this cash project, but then let's take X amount of money and then we do something fun with that for ourselves or for the studio or for a project. And that is to say, we can flex our creative muscle, we can have fun with it, and also it can get, what do you say, buzz around the world, and we can
Mhm.
actually get work from it. So it's not that bad. And if you compare it to just throwing money at big awards, I think that this is just another way of doing it.
Absolutely. We actually have, there's a really good case study from our friend Andrew Hotch, who I hope I'm saying that right. I'm pretty sure I am. every year on his birthday, he gives himself I think it was like a gift of a project. Like, I'm going to do this project for my birthday this year, like just a fun project. And he did it for a whole year, kept doing the project every time he flew on a Southwest airline. And at the end, it became a collaboration with Southwest. And
Nice.
he did this talk at Adobe Max, and it's probably online somewhere. And he talked about how when they went to go pay him because it became a real project, he was like, well, my birthday rules are that I like can't make money off of it. Like, this is solely for creative practice and pleasure. And so he took the money and like reinvested it into the project and made this amazing like VHS inspired advertising campaign for it, and then used that to help sell the product. And so he just reinvested that in because it wasn't his job. He has a job. It was
Mm.
just for fun, and it was so fulfilling. He got to work with his friends. He got to like see the product in real life, and it was such a cool story and such a reminder that like those passion projects and doing those things just for the sake of flexing your creative muscles is so important. Like, I don't care if it's related to design or if it's like learning to knit or learning to bake sourdough or whatever it is. Those things are the things that like we pour so much into that they become the things that change our programming and
Mm.
like, dictate the way our future is going to go. I think those passion projects and the things we do just for fun are so important.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Okay, I have a couple. Do you have any other questions you want to ask, Katie?
My dog's a barking, but yeah, go for whatever you're
Okay.
going to go.
I did want to say one more thing about, I heard you say this in another interview, but you meditate. Are you
Yeah.
still meditating? Can we talk about
Hmm.
meditation for like a hot second before we
Yeah.
get into our rapid fire? How has it impacted your life? Have you always done it? Give me all the details.
I mean, no, I haven't always done it. I mean, I think I realized when maybe 6 years ago that, why am I a guy who never really dig deep inside and actually doesn't really, I'm not connected to my emotions, and every woman I meet are pros at this and I'm not. And then that basically made me go into, well, I met with my girlfriend, and then after a while, I went to therapy, and then I decided to take this 1 year course on personal development to just kind of dig deep inside and try and like, okay, like how did I grow up? What's my inner child? What's my triggers, etc. All these things. And that course was a lot of meditation, and I tried meditating through apps and stuff like that, but I could never do it. I was so like didn't have any patience, I couldn't focus, etc. But that course really, really helped me, and so I think it's like super nice thing to do, even if it's just 3 minutes. It
Mm-hmm.
helps you. And if you're stressed, I mean, it's a great way of de-stressing. It's the best way to fall asleep, because the way we fall asleep normally is just we are animals who pretend to fall asleep and then we fall asleep. That's how we fall asleep. But
Yeah.
if you actually, if you focus on basically, if you are meditating yourself to sleep, it's a much nicer way of doing it. Just focusing on your breath, and that will, yeah, it's a nicer way than just pretending to
Yeah.
be asleep.
My parents actually took me to a meditation class when I
Hmm.
was probably under 10 years old, and it really stuck with me. And I continue to be really bad at it. And
Hmm.
that's kind of the point, is like everyone who starts meditation is really bad at it. Everyone who's doing meditation is doing it to get better. Very, very few people are experts at meditation. Everyone is like, oh, my mind's wandering. Let me bring it back. It's just being more aware. And I really love guided meditation because that works really well for me. But that's fantastic that you found that and it's helped you so much in your life. And props to you for recognizing areas that you could improve on and actually doing something about it.
Yeah. How do
Um,
you use it? Do you use it in your work or just privately, or?
definitely fall asleep to it. I do a guided meditation at night, or I know it so well that I run it myself in my head. Yeah, de-stress, anxiety, just to like start on a positive note when I'm feeling just in the dumps, I guess.
Hmm.
It's been something that I want to pursue even more, and I'm just really interested in it. I think it's
Do you know
fantastic.
the calligrapher Prescribe?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Well, I know you do, Ilana. Yeah, we had Paul on for our
Oh
conference, the
yeah.
Kernference, and he does this really cool meditative breathing when he does calligraphy. And so his whole class that he did was about letting your breath work and the motion of the strokes that you do when you're writing your calligraphy, kind of matching those up. And it's just this really cool, like meditative,
Yeah.
super geeky calligraphic experience, and that's really cool. So
Nice.
if anybody's listening to this and doesn't know about that, I'm sure he
We'll put
has
it in the show notes.
yeah, oh yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for sure.
And then I want to circle back to something from the beginning. Katie jotted a note about this, and I thought it was really important. Do you have any tips for people who want to pitch a crazy, wild idea and they're afraid if the client's going to bite, or like maybe they're presenting a logo and they present one that is, kind of on brand, and then they present one that's like way off and in a totally different direction? Do you have any advice for kind of putting something out there that you're not sure how it will be received?
I mean, I think preparing is the key there because no matter what idea you want to sell, if you want to sell it without demolishing it after 3 meetings, you need to prepare and build up the reasons why. And the absolute best way is actually having your client thinking they came up with it. That's like the best way to do it. It's actually a manipulation method if you want to manipulate your friends, which you should not. But let's say that you want to go to the cinema and they don't want, that they don't want to. And if you say like, hey, should we go to cinema? They would like, no, no. But then you just, oh, I'm going to bring up a memory for them. And then like, oh, remember last year in February? What did we do in February last year? And they were like, oh, I don't know, went to this party, yeah, something else. Yeah, did we see that film? And then, oh yeah, we saw that film. Yeah, that was really good. Ha ha. What film was it? Blah blah. And then you're silent, and after a while, like, maybe we should go to the cinema today. Someone says, and then you're like, yeah, maybe we should. But that's of course an easy way. But you
Yeah,
could do
yeah.
that with clients by basically like, in order to stand out, you need to be bold. In order to take
Right.
risks, you take risks because everything worth having never came without a risk. And you just
Yeah.
build it up, and like you don't want to be generic, you don't want to look like everyone else. That means that in colors you need to not look like blue, navy, beige, for example. And in order for typography, we don't want to look generic with a normal sans serif. So we should go somewhere. And you build it up slowly, 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 so that when it comes to your idea that you want to show, they already kind of decided, unless they were very opposing in the process, but they are never. And I think that's the way to sell a crazy idea, to just build it up slowly and almost making
Yeah.
them think that it's their idea.
Yeah,
I
have them
think
say
that
yes at every little stage in the process. Yes, of course that makes sense. Yes. And so at the
right.
end of yeah, it's the just the natural answer.
And
Yeah,
I think they're saying yes. They should be saying yes because all the research that you've done is in response to the thing they've asked you for. So they've asked you, how do we stand out from the crowd? Well, you want to stand out, right? Yes. Like you're reiterating, you're taking what they gave you. It's like when Michael Scott is like, I'm going to take all your ideas, I'm going to eat them up and see what I spit back out. It's also that context of like, I've seen so many people just deliver a logo and it's like, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the whole package. They're looking for how does that translate everywhere? And so that pitch deck, I feel like, is a really good way. I bet you all have killer pitch decks if you use them or whatever method you use. And being an expert and educating your client on like, well, you want your messaging to stand out. How do we get your messaging to stand out? And just, yeah, positioning is really, really
Yeah. And going back to the things that they say in the initial discovery phase, I think is really important too. At the agency that I worked at out of school, we had this really collaborative process where, we'd have sticky notes and, the whole room of people, which was usually too many cooks, would get all their says on like, as we were trying to kind of figure out what their brand voice was and their like core tenants and things like that. They would all put things on the sticky notes. So then later, when we were showing them what we came up with, we could be like, remember when you put down this specific word on this sticky note? That made me think of this idea. And then they're like, oh, I have some ownership in this. And again, it goes back to that like little bit of ego or just feeling like contribution more than anything. Like, oh yeah, that was me. And now I see it. And so now they're like 10 times more likely to buy in.
yeah, for sure. That's how you sell things. And I think another
Yeah.
important aspect is not to choose the BS door, because if you open that door, bullshit, the client will be able to walk in that door as well. So if you start like, oh, why do you choose red? Oh, because red means love. Oh,
Ew.
and then you use the bullshit door.
Ew.
And then the client say, yeah, but red means blood, and there was a bombing here, whatever that
Right.
week. Oh, yeah, that's true as well. Or green, it means grass. Yeah, but it means marijuana. It means envy. Oh, yeah, that's true. And I think that using a lot of BS is not good. So try to like refrain from it. And whenever a client says something, take like it's great. Everything is allowed to say something, but you have to be able to also back it up with arguments. Otherwise, it's just like whatever everyone thinks at the moment.
Yeah.
So whatever you think, back it up. It looks like an elephant. Oh, okay, why? Because of this. Oh, and how does it matter? And is this right or wrong? And
Yeah, it looks like an elephant because I showed it to my husband and he said that his cousin thought that.
Yeah, exactly. No, all the time. And then you ask
Yeah,
like,
we hear
oh,
that constantly.
yeah, and then it's very American also. Well, for us, because it's a lot of our clients from America says that. But then we say like, oh, so is your often a colleague? Is your colleague here? Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, but get him or her because he or she is probably a brand expert. No. Oh, they're not? Okay. So should we just bring someone in from the street then? Or because why did you ask that person if that person is not a brand expert? Did he or she have 3 years of education in graphic design and space and typography? No. So why are we asking that
It
person?
comes back to that idea that everyone wants to be validated, everyone wants to like have a say in it. And so I do like the idea of finding ways to like kind of nudge your client to feel like they have a say, because they do. I mean, like they're leaning on you as the expert, but ultimately like it's almost convincing them. And
Mm,
so if they feel like they're a part of it, not a part of it like they're sitting and sketching with you, but if they feel like, oh yeah, just like I said, it should be red. And you're like, exactly like you said, we took your red and we mixed it up and we turned it into this. Yeah, I think that's a really strategic way of going about it and getting
I
them.
think it's almost part of our job description to take the client by the hand and lead them through the process because they
Absolutely.
kind of need it. They're often kind of lost. And I think
Absolutely.
that, yeah,
That's why they're hiring an expert.
yeah.
It's exactly what they want. They just don't know exactly what that looks like yet. I love all of this. I wish we could talk for hours. We need to wrap up. So, what I want to do is just have you do a quick shout out to where people can find you and follow up with you. I know you do a lot of speaking engagements. So, if you want to hear more, where can people find you?
So snask.com and just search on Snask on Instagram and then try and catch us on any of our speaking and engagements at conferences around the globe. I think that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Freddie. It was great to talk to you. And
Likewise, thank
I
you for
really
having
loved this
me.
conversation.
Yeah, me
Absolutely. All
It's a
too.
right.
delight. Good luck on your
Delightful.
fingertip healing.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
All right. All good things.